In 1775, Thomas Paine wrote a pamphlet stating that the freedoms of men can only be maintained by limiting the power of government. The pamphlet was called Common Sense, and today it still is common sense.
I'm Mark Zaccaria.
I'm April Giarrusso. This is Common Sense. Welcome back. If you think taking your time can occasionally be stretched too far by government, you've come to the right place for commentary that will confirm your worst fears. This week, we'll analyze the sorry state of Rhode Island's pension fund and how procrastination has played a pivotal role in the bad service we provided for our retirees as a result. We'll touch on the fact that the Raimondo administration has wasted a few weeks in keeping a key appointment filled by booting the procedural requirements of advice and consent. And then we'll hint at how that's nothing compared to the years that have been wasted in the shop that appointment oversees. Have you heard the Ocean State cheer, "We're number 50"? We'll document the whys and wherefores of that one too. Go team! As always, State Representative Patricia Morgan will have a detailed, in-depth interview for us. This week, she takes a deep dive into the murky waters of undocumented foreigners in the Ocean State. Her guide will be activist Dexter Lui, and he'll explain a few things about what it costs this population to be underground in Little Rhodey, and what it costs us. In between segments, Mark and I will drop back in to spread a little irony and mirth as we ask the weekly question, are you kidding me? Finally, we will bring this broadcast home with words of sage and experienced wisdom as commentator Jeff Richard delivers the second and final part of his series on aging in America. To get things rolling, let's have a little of that aforementioned commentary. Mark?
Thanks, April. Last week on Rhode Island NPR's show, A Lively Experiment, financial guru Mike Riley took Projo editor Ed Acorn to school. The question on the table was the assertion by Rhode Island Democrat Chair Joe McNamara that the state's pension fund would be fully solvent by 2040. Riley used a mathematical model known as the Monte Carlo method to prove that humans will stick with a plan despite it being proven to be irrational. In other words, in a game of chance, the average player will not change his or her position, once taken, even in the face of evidence the odds are against. According to Mike Riley, the casinos depend on that psychological norm to guarantee their profits. The few successful professional gamblers on the circuit depend on it too, to camouflage their winning choices, which are all against the norm. So how does that relate to the Rhode Island Pension Fund? Today, it is just 57% funded, with just $7.2 billion in assets to pay a total of $13 billion in already accrued benefits. To make up that $5.8 billion, Joe McNamara's assumption is that the fund will enjoy returns of 7.5% per year compounded over the 24 years between now and his target date. By the way, Joe, interest rates are presently zero, and the fund's investment performance in recent years has been negative. So how and when is this 7.5% windfall going to start? What put Ed Acorn into Riley's crosshairs was his endorsement of Seth Magaziner in 2014 over the far more qualified Ernie Almonte. I take Riley's point. As long as we continue making political decisions based on the fantasies of majority party talking points, we will continue to do a disservice to the hard-working, tax-paying men and women of our state. And it looks like it will be a very costly disservice at that, unless we take real action real soon. April?
Taking action soon is sometimes a problem, Mark. On March 31st, Regina M. Costa's term as the state's child advocate came to an end. On March 17th, Governor Raimondo announced her appointment of Jennifer A. Griffith to replace Costa in the position. Griffith is an attorney with Rhode Island Legal Services, but there was one glitch in her appointment. The appointment requires advice and consent of the Senate, and that has not yet been granted. In fact, the Senate hasn't even convened yet to discuss the appointment because they were not officially notified until March 22nd. It's cutting it pretty close. So close, in fact, that the Senate could not get that on the docket until April 7th. Thankfully, the law provides that the current child advocate may remain in the position even after their 5-year term expires until a replacement can be nominated and approved. So it's not like we're in a dire situation. Well, the Projo did report that there are more than 320 unlicensed foster homes hosting children in this state, operating illegally without any state intervention. So I guess it is super important for this changing of the guard to happen as efficiently as possible. The Providence Journal is not clear why the process has been held up, but the governor has been pretty busy lately with the whole toll plan and those little tourism hiccups. Any ideas, Mark?
Thank you, April. Here's one. Let's put a few puzzle pieces together and see if we can solve a riddle, shall we? Last week, Go Local Prov ran a snapshot summary of 20 or so different analyses of the economic performance and prospects of the Ocean State as assessed by a range of different organizations. What do you think the overall picture looked like when they were all taken together? That's right, it was pretty grim. What I saw, though, was a pretty clear pattern emerging of why we suffer so much economically and, by extension, what we could do to fix it. First, a representative cross-section of the data presented. WalletHub.com rates Rhode Island as 4th worst state in which to be a residential taxpayer. That's 48th out of 51. The site claims our total taxes are 27% above the national average. It also notes that Rhode Island has the highest automobile property taxes in America. By the way, is that a luxury tax, or does the state provide some common public service to all cars? Folks, that's all money being taken out of the productive economy, leaving that much less fuel for the economic engine. U.S. Tax Foundation cites Rhode Island as 45th best business climate, primarily due to inordinately high corporate taxes. The Economist grades U.S. states on small business friendliness. With them, the Ocean State gets an F, one of only 6 to do that. The publication states, quote, overbearing bureaucracy and excessive licensing is stifling small business, unquote. Forbes magazine rates Rhode Island in the bottom 5 for the business environment for 5 years running. That's because of the scarcity of capital and excess of regulation. The magazine identifies one byproduct of this low ranking: the nation's highest net migration, as our neighbors and children just leave in search of work. Gallup rates our state in the bottom 10 for job creation every year since 2008. Similarly, Gallup rates Metro Providence as 2nd worst in the nation for job creation. Finally, the Kauffman Foundation ranks every American state for the incidence of entrepreneurship. We come in 50th. What I see in all this is the public sector absorption of working capital combined with its overhead demands to comply with onerous regulations and licensing fees. This 1-2 punch is killing business here by making it easier to do business elsewhere. This phenomena is exaggerated here in Little Rhodey, of course, by our culture of doing for the elites before we even consider anything on behalf of the ordinary citizen. As a group, Rhode Islanders seem shell-shocked by all this, and it makes us seem resigned to it as our inevitable fate. Ladies and gentlemen, that could not be farther from the truth. We could change it all in one session of the General Assembly, but therein lies the problem. We would have to change. Spend less. Demand faster response out of bureaucrats. Retire outdated laws and regs. In short, we'd have to make Rhode Island into what it was 150 years ago. I'm ready to get started. Are you? April?
Sure, Mark. For the record, I'm ready to go back to the future, but unless that's a really souped-up DeLorean on the curb, may I suggest we finish the show first. So let's move towards the start of State Representative Pat Morgan's interview, but we'll do so via a slight detour while we ask the question, are you kidding me? If your party don't fit, then you must quit. Are you kidding me? The Rhode Island Republican Party has a brand new member, former Democrat and current State Representative Karen McBeth. We've applauded Representative McBeth before on Common Sense, so let me start by saying welcome. Enjoy your complimentary t-shirt. Rep. McBeth was the committee chair of the House Oversight Committee. So now that she's jumped ship, Speaker of the House Nicholas Mattiello has given her the boot from that position. Raise your hand if you're shocked. I'm going to go ahead and make an assumption that she didn't switch because of a strong passion for the foundations of the Republican Party, like small government, but most likely because of her distaste for how the current ruling party is more focused on staying in control than by serving its constituents. Again, I'm hypothesizing. But wouldn't it be outstanding if this started a trend? I'm not just talking about representatives switching parties, but people throughout the state really question whether or not their elected officials were fulfilling their duties properly. And what if those people didn't back down when the leadership brushed them off or gave half answers, and instead got up and voted out the people not doing their jobs? What a world that would be. So again, I welcome Representative Macbeth to the Republican Party, and I openly invite anybody else to come and check it out. Hey, Speaker Mattiello, you want a free t-shirt? Are you kidding me? Coming up, State Representative Pat Morgan interviews Dexter Lui on the topic of illegal aliens and what that costs them and us. Stay tuned between segments for answers to the question, are you kidding me? Finally, Jeff Richard completes his two-part series on aging in America. It's Common Sense, Rhode Island.
Find us on Cox Channel 15 or Verizon Channel 34, Saturdays at 4 p.m. and Sundays at 10 a.m. Find us on the web at www.gaspyproject.com/commonsenseri. You can also find us on Facebook as Common Sense of Rhode Island and on Twitter at @CommonSenseRI.
Welcome to Common Sense Rhode Island. This is a program where we try to make sense out of the policies that affect your life and come up with common sense solutions. I'm Representative Patricia Morgan, and today we have with us Dexter Lui, who has agreed to come and talk with us about immigration, because you're an immigrant.
I am. I'm a naturalized American citizen.
And what do you do for a living?
I'm actually retired now, but I was in the product development business for the entertainment industry and the toy industry pretty much all my life, 35 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Most of your work here in the United States, or?
International. I had a partner actually overseas for a good amount of time, over a decade. Prior to that, I worked for corporate in America, so kind of worked up the ranks, studied industrial design at the Rhode Island School of Design, went to work for a corporation, and went on from there.
Okay, so you ended up in Rhode Island because of your schooling?
Actually, because of the schooling initially in the early 70s, and then because of job opportunity later on, late 70s, when I came back to Rhode Island, left again, and went away to work for a large corporation, General Mills, and went a couple of different corporate jobs through Connecticut, eventually coming back to Rhode Island and actually becoming a junior partner with a startup venture in '86.
Okay, and now you're going to leave again, but we won't talk about that. Where are you from originally?
My parents were originally from Shanghai, China.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so you're an immigrant from China then? From China.
With Chinese, I'm a Chinese descent, yes.
Okay,
correct.
Great. Obviously, illegal immigration has been talked about a lot because of the presidential election. And here in Rhode Island, because of the illegal immigrants wanting to get driver's licenses. So it's kind of out there. It's been on talk radio and newspapers and stuff. You immigrated legally. I guess I'd like to just hear some of your opinions about all of the conversation that's happening around the topic.
Yeah, it's obviously a passionate conversation, and I understand on both sides.
Very emotional.
Very emotional, and it's personal because it involves human beings, real lives, and so forth. And we all concur.
And I think it also gets wrapped into economics as well.
Clearly.
Competition for jobs.
Clearly.
Use of government services, resources. So it really is a big topic that goes across a lot of different government services, policies, and then effects on personal lives as well.
Of course. I come at it kind of this way. I mean, looking at my own personal situation, and one of the reasons that I chose to become an American is because I had a desire to stay in this country because I have grown to love this country and am proud to call it my home. That didn't happen by happenstance. It was because of a long, protracted process of coming in as a foreign student initially, applying for a work permit, and then eventually going through the green card process, and then deciding to apply for citizenship and then becoming sworn in. So it's a long process, and you can argue that indeed that process that's offered to those who choose to become American, to immigrate here in this country, is really a long vetting process.
Yeah, it's funny that you should say that in the past it's been a very long process. My mom was a war bride, and she came over. Obviously, my dad married her, and she came over after World War II. And it took her a long time to make that emotional cut with England. She's from England, right? And say, no, I love America. I'm American. She felt American. She wanted to be American. She never wanted to go back to England again. And that's the kind of
I concur.
Citizen we want,
absolutely.
right?
I absolutely concur. You know, I mean, for us, my family, and I have brother and sister, same thing, same process. We love this country for a whole host of reasons. It is truly a melting pot. And, you know, I take exception to this notion of diversity, which really suggests division.
Yeah.
And in this country, it's not about division, it's about the melting pot. And I married an American.
It always was about the melting pot.
Absolutely.
Honestly, my mom had an English accent when she first came over. I don't know if you had a Chinese accent or not, but you don't now. And my dad said, you're in America, you're not going to have an accent, you're going to speak like an American. And she worked at not having an accent because she wanted to be just like all of us, right?
But to me, that was so important, the melting pot.
The melting pot part.
And part and parcel of being part of that melting pot is respect for the rule of law of this country. And why? Because in a way, it's kind of a selfish motive. Because if we have truly a rule of law and everybody is truly given the same opportunities such as we've been granted through our Constitution, that's the country I want to be in. So if we go on a slippery slope, which is, in my opinion, what's happening today with this debate about immigration versus illegal immigration, to me, I take huge exception. And the story that's not been told is, what about all those people who want to be in America and do it right, come in through the front door, go through the proper vetting process, and eventually take great pride in becoming naturalized? What about them?
Well, exactly. How long did it take you to actually get here and to become a citizen?
I came into America in 1968, September 1968, and went to actually high school. And eventually graduated high school, came to RISD. I forget exactly the timeline. I can't pin down exactly what year, but it took several years. Of course, going through school, I had the student visa. And eventually, when I applied for a job and was accepted at a corporation, the company was kind enough to help me get a work permit so that I could stay in this country and actually work for them. And then through that process, eventually I applied for a green card and received a green card.
So that's when, I mean, you've been here legally the whole time, but
yes.
at the green card, that's when you say, okay, I want to be
here, I want to be a permanent resident.
So how many years do you think that took?
Oh, geez, that's
a bunch.
8 to 10 years easily.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's what I hear from immigrants that come here legally. They fill out the forms, they go through the whole process. It takes years.
It takes years.
It takes years. When somebody sneaks in the line in front of them, it pushes those people farther back in the line.
Correct. There's two
And
things.
it's a disservice to those who are doing it the right way.
Well, it's a slap in the face to those people. But the other thing, too, is if you even take that off the table, what doesn't happen is this person has not assimilated into America to the extent that the others have actually worked hard to. And to me, that's where I take the exception. So to me, the debate really shouldn't be about immigration versus illegal immigration, because those two are apples and oranges. And illegal immigrants simply don't get the vetting process, simply don't have the heart to become America. And, you know, some may choose to, but again, we leave that completely to chance, and of course we have chaos as a result.
All right. Well, that's sobering. But we'll be back in just a few minutes, and we'll continue the conversation.
Here at Common Sense TV, We appreciate our friends at RI Future almost as much as we do Mr. Robert Cando, the embattled executive director of the RI Board of Elections. Or is it former ED this week? Whatever. Between them, we've received so much food for humor that they may be the ones most responsible for the success of the phrase, "Are you kidding me?" This week, Andrew Stewart of RI Future wrote a blog post castigating Motif magazine for its lack of diversity in nominations for the publication's annual music awards. Listen, if you've never seen or read Motif, you really should do yourself a favor and bring up motifri.com. The magazine is a laid-back, informative guidebook to both culture and style as it is being played out around the Ocean State right now. If you're like me, and you're at that awkward age when you just don't make the club scene as much as you once did, Motif is a great way to stay abreast of what's happening. RI Future, on the other hand, is a guidebook to victimhood. It's all a capitalist plot. No. It's all a sexist plot. No. It's all a racist plot. Wait. No. It's probably a combination of all three. So with that as his editorial position, Mr. Stewart whined in his post that the nominations bore a, quote, resemblance to tapioca pudding, unquote. Hold on now. A music reviewer could be blind and still not be handicapped for his or her profession. And anyways, Motif led its introduction of this year's nominees with a detailed explanation of the process by which they were chosen. Booking agents at 85 local venues provided most of the input. Those in charge of playlists at 17 local radio stations and record labels supplied the next largest number of votes. Sure, the 4 editors at Motif acted as ombudsmen and tiebreakers, but this is a very transparent process that's clearly based on the sounds of the artists, not their gender or looks. To imply institutional sexism and racism on the part of a tiny staff of true believers in the quality of their message of modern culture is a bridge too far, even for RI Future. Do they now want the affirmative action program to apply to free subculture tabloids? Really? Are you kidding me?
Welcome back. I'm Representative Patricia Morgan, and today we have with us Dexter Lui, who is a retired product development specialist, expert, retired now, and also an immigrant who came here legally many years ago and is now an American.
Correct.
Okay. We were talking about the effects of illegal immigration on our country, our communities, basically. And that just coming in as illegal shows disrespect, I guess, to the rule of law.
It does. Depending on circumstances, some may be truly desperate. I understand that. But still, the consequence of that is our laws are being compromised. The country's sovereignty, indeed, is being compromised. Our security, national security is being compromised. Our economics are terribly being compromised. And, of course, it just raises the bar in terms of competition, unfairly so, because whereas you have people who worked hard to be here and be an American.
And stood in line. Right. And made out the forms and worked with employers or schools or whatever. But it's an enormous amount of time and effort and energy
it's a commitment
to come here legally. I know in the past, I don't know if it still exists, but you used to have a sponsor. Now, you had a company sponsor you.
I had a company sponsor, yes.
You could have a family sponsor you.
Yes, that's right.
But they became responsible.
Absolutely.
To make sure you had the wherewithal to stay
you
here
weren't a
and
criminal.
support yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, and exactly. And, you are there for a purpose. The reason the company sponsored me is because they valued my contribution, and they felt that it was unique enough to warrant sponsorship. So, there are things that you work towards. They didn't come easily. I worked hard for it, much as I know many legal immigrants do.
They do.
And I think what we leave to chance, and when we create this slippery slope and allow those who actually haven't paid their dues to come in, regardless of their circumstance, to come in, what happens to that melting pot? They're not necessarily assimilating. And indeed, we know many are not.
Yeah.
They really become problematic. And
They're staying in pockets in communities, develop a mini culture inside the larger culture.
And there's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, part of it, of course, understandably, is because their status is checkered, shall we say. It's illegal. So they may want to hide that fact. And of course, increasingly, they're coming out in the open because there's so many people openly supporting this.
But let's talk again about the effects of illegal immigration on legal immigration.
And American citizens.
Right.
Yeah.
I think of the competition for jobs.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
When our economy is not creating a multitude of jobs.
No.
There's competition for every single one of them. Mm-hmm. And if illegal immigrants, because of their status, come in and say, well, we'll work for free under the table,
right,
then the ones who come here legally,
yeah, I mean, obviously, those of us who have gone through the paces of actually going through the process and then naturalizing, and I've been a businessman. I actually have been involved in several business ventures prior to retirement. And I'm hypersensitive, obviously, to the workforce and what it's doing to our workforce. And I just don't buy this notion that there's jobs that Americans will not take. I simply don't buy that notion. And I think it's really just a poor excuse to actually bend our rules, as it were, and to allow this to go on. Because the fact of the matter is, there's plenty of people who want to work, okay, given the opportunity. And when you have a situation where, I wasn't one of those employers. I mean, actually, my businesses were business to business. We were basically a service industry supporting large corporations and branded companies. But where you have a consumer-based retail type situation, like the fast food industry and the farming business and so on, and where you do need perhaps less skilled labor.
Sure, unskilled in a lot of ways.
Absolutely,
just show up.
absolutely.
That's right.
I mean, the entry-level types of
gardening.
work. What happens to our teenagers? What happens to those who really desperately need, like a wife whose husband's perhaps not pulling in enough, and she would like to work at a fast food restaurant just to supplement the income of the household. Now all of a sudden she's being boxed out.
Sure.
So those are the problems.
It's competition for jobs. Yeah. You're right. Not only among immigrants, but also regular citizens.
Yeah, exactly.
The teenagers who need that first job to get started with their lives.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and then there's also the competition for government services.
Sure.
Right? Sure. The health care, the schooling.
I mean, what we pay in public schooling. And we have already challenged budgets to run these schools. And that's where our tax dollars go to. And every school year, they have to wake up and say, wait a minute, by law, we have to accept these students who actually weren't here last year. They don't actually belong here. But by law, we have to educate them. So what does that do to, it blows up the state budget.
It blows up the budget of the communities. Then it's also more expensive schooling because it is English as second language.
Correct.
Training, different kinds of problems that confront schools.
Right.
I also think in terms of the competition just for housing.
Sure.
We know that it's in short supply in many of our cities. When it's in short supply, the prices go up.
Right.
Right? So families are having a hard time finding adequate housing for their families as a result.
I think just as with entry-level type positions, it challenges the housing market in a respect that most people don't talk about, because the people who are hurt the most are the ones who can ill afford it. Those who can't afford it, it doesn't affect them so much.
Yeah, that's a really good observation. I agree with you. Illegal immigration hurts me and you less than it hurts the poor.
Exactly.
Who need those entry-level jobs.
Exactly.
Who need the government support.
Supplemental income.
Yeah.
Have a teenager work.
The inexpensive housing or the supplemental income.
Right.
It really does hurt the poor more. And yet when you talk about it nowadays, it's become like you become demonized if you say anything against illegal immigrants. I'm amazed that quite frankly, because I respect our laws, I am amazed that it's so open and out there that illegal immigrants will come and rally in the State House.
I am absolutely stunned by that as well. I mean, the open and the openness of disobeying our rule of law is rampant. And yet there are those who willingly accept it. I am absolutely befuddled, because as an American now, I mean, that's one of the reasons why it's so great to be an American, because you can always count on our rule of law, or at least we did.
We used to. It just, again, we have to have a respect for the process, because it protects everybody.
Correct.
Including the new immigrants that are coming.
Absolutely.
Right? And to do anything less, we shouldn't be demonized for saying, hey, let's do it the right way.
Right.
Because we're just trying to protect what's unique about us.
Right.
All right, we're going to take a break and we'll be right back.
Breaking news. Rhode Island is warmer, cooler, and our capital city is Reykjavik. Er tu agrenas immer? Well, my apologies for that if you can actually speak Icelandic. I did give it my best try. Regardless of language, though, I bet you know exactly what I'm talking about. Last week, the brand new state tourism marketing campaign was unveiled to little or no applause. The bland logo and equally bland and confusing tagline has left most of the state wanting. So much so that local artists and creative types have been posting their own logos and taglines, including this widespread concept designed by Missy Hardesty, a young and yet lifelong Rhode Islander. She came up with this in 10 minutes. Whereas we spent $400,000 on an out-of-state designer to come up with that weird primary colors sailboat thing you've all seen by now. With all the talk about bringing jobs to RI, and considering we have one of the top art schools in the country right in our own capital city, why, oh why, would you do this? Why not open up some sort of competition? Have us Rhode Islanders vote online, make us part of the promotional process, instead of going over our heads and giving us something that we don't want. I mean, you've never done that before. But at least our state officials did give a job to a Rhode Island-based company called IndieWhip, who edited a promotional video for our new tourism website. And of course, they had to throw egg in our faces by messing up. Pretty big. Like, Iceland big. Because they used footage of Reykjavik instead of Rhode Island. The Providence Journal even renamed us Rhode Iceland for the occasion. You had one job. You literally had one job. And that was to show off our state. Sure, errors happen, but you had one job. You add this to the underwhelming logo, the moderately tempered tagline, and we aren't having a great start to our new marketing initiative. But wait, there's more, because of course there is. The new tourism website added another gaffe by stating that our state has about 20% of the nation's historic landmarks. It takes like 45 minutes to get across our state the long way. I don't think that we have 20% of anything in the nation. And we definitely don't have 20% of the 2,500 national historic landmarks in this country. In fact, we have a grand total of 45, which equals less than 2% of the total. So if someone mistyped that by putting in an extra zero, again, I have to remind you, you had one job! No state has 20% of the landmarks, and the top two states with the most landmarks, New York and Massachusetts, have 10% and 7% respectively. But there is one shining spot in this whole ordeal. I'm never going to win Miss Rhode Island, but I'll be damned if I miss out on winning Miss Rhode Iceland. Are you kidding me?
Welcome back. I'm Representative Patricia Morgan, and today we have with us Dexter Lui, a retired product engineer. Am I getting that right?
Well, actually, I was an entrepreneur. I did engineering, I did design, did marketing. I actually ran several businesses.
Okay,
Yeah.
So real talented guy who is himself an immigrant from China, long time, now a citizen. We were talking about the rule of law and why it is so important. And I think one of the things that makes America such an exceptional place is our rule of law.
Absolutely.
Right? In other countries, kind of banana republics, you're not quite sure what the system is, the judicial system, but here we certainly are. And when illegal immigrants break the rule of law, they damage that for everybody.
Yes, it's a terrible slippery slope. It's certainly one of the reasons why I'm proud to be an American, is the fact that we have the Constitution, we do have the rule of law. It's something that's foundational, that we could always count on, and it levels the playing field because it protects absolutely everyone.
Yes.
You know, regardless of your race. I mean, justice is, after all, blind in America, right? Lady Justice always had that wrap around her head, right?
That's right.
We got to remind people of that. So when you
there's not supposed to be favored classes or races or religions. It's blind.
Absolutely.
Everybody is treated the same when they're in the legal system. Yeah.
Regardless of your economic status, regardless of your race or creed or religion, you're bound by the same rule of law, and that's what makes America great.
It's one of the things that makes us very, very great. We were talking about how illegal immigration hurts those that come here legally, and I wanted to just talk about an episode that I had in my life, or an experience. I had my kids down at Six Flags, and we were standing in a long line. There was a special ride that they wanted to get on, a really cool ride. And so you know how you wind back and forth, and it was clear we were going to be there for an hour, but they wanted to go on it really bad, and everybody was waiting patiently. And at one point, a group of older teenagers came bounding in, jumping over the railings to get to the front of the line. Of course, everybody was irritated by this, but we were almost afraid to say anything, right? And clearly, we were all angry, and we were angry not because we didn't want them to be on the ride, but because by them jumping over the line, we were going to wait longer.
They hurt everybody else because you waited an hour.
Yeah, and now we were going to have to wait an hour and whatever.
That's right, because
right,
they took
and
someone's
that's
seat.
what happens in illegal immigration as well. I mean, I know that people are in other countries, they want to come to the United States. I get it, we're a wonderful country. But they're waiting sometimes years to do it the right way.
Right.
And illegal immigration is making those folks who respect the rule of law wait longer.
And it's a cruel statement on the state of our politics today, because I think it's very cynical. It's very, very cynical, and it actually ignores one of the key components of what makes this country absolutely, a wonderful country, and I would argue the best one in the world, because of our rule of law. And they're compromising it, and really, it's heartbreaking.
It's heartbreaking. So it is heartbreaking, and we've talked about the effect of illegal immigration on citizens and legal immigrants, but there's also a downside for the illegals.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
They work for less.
Sure.
Many times they're exploited.
They're absolutely, and I can cite some examples. Actually, I've been involved in the consumer product business all my life. And I've been involved in manufacturing domestically and internationally. And I can tell you, say in the garment district, it wasn't too long ago, and perhaps it's still going on today because it's just kind of hidden from view. When you corrupt the rule of law, employers, those who are corrupt,
unscrupulous, yeah.
Unscrupulous ones will exploit the illegal aliens, because what happens is they come in, they're afraid to be discovered because they know they violated the law of the land, but they are trying to make a living. So I can tell you for a fact that in the garment district there used to be basements full of manufacturing where undocumented workers were there, being exploited and working horrendous hours for less than minimum wage, and these people have political influence in their municipality, and they get away with it. And this is the slippery slope. It works both ways. It hurts the people who come here illegally. It just hurts people. So rule of law is so important to protect, because it would help the people who want to be here legally. It would help the workers who legitimately deserve a fair wage.
Yeah, I think of not only sweatshops, as I think what you were
That's right.
basically describing, but
That's right.
The sex trade, I think.
That too,
is something that's where illegals are really hurt, taken terrible advantage of, because they're here illegally and they can't go out to the policeman.
Yeah.
Right?
You speak of the rule of law. To me, it should be absolutely protected, the rule of law. Because once you're on that slippery slope, you degrade the force of our judicial system and the legitimacy of it. There's no telling where it's going to go. And then we see the corruption happen. And it creates I don't want to say it's an unintended consequence, but indeed it is a consequence.
It's a consequence.
Yeah.
And, obviously at some point on the national level, they have to deal with immigration
Right.
and straighten it out and figure out what works and what doesn't work. But for those that are calling for an end to illegal immigration, I really resent them being demonized and called, all kinds of racist, you hate people of color, that's nothing to do with it.
You're absolutely right. I mean, to me, I mean, to be blunt, it's a political tactic. It is designed deliberately for a political position, and it's a tactic. And you're demonized, therefore you are really, you feel threatened. And it takes a lot of courage to overcome that, especially in today's, I want to say bluntly, dishonest discourse. And that's what it is, because they're conflating illegal immigration with legitimate immigration. The two are apples and oranges. It's not the same thing.
Yeah, I know. I saw a tweet the other day on my Twitter feed. Yes, I Twitter. And it was, I don't hate Muslims. I'm just worried about the ones who want to kill us.
Yeah.
Right? And that would be I think for everybody. We have always opened our arms to immigrants. My mom's an immigrant, you're an immigrant. Did you think people didn't want you here?
No,
but they wanted you to come legally.
Yep.
Right? Respect our laws. Respect our culture. Respect that makes America great.
Absolutely.
Right?
And when you...
And melt. Be part of the melting pot.
Be part of the melting pot. I mean, I remember the book that I had to study. I had to study the Constitution. I had to take the citizenship test. There should be validity for the citizenship test for everyone.
Sure. You work hard to become a citizen.
You need to
make
understand
it worth
civics. You need to understand how this country works.
Yeah. All right, we're going to take a break and we'll be right back.
So, imagine you took your car for repairs, and the garage said they had no idea whether or not they'd fixed it. But they also said you had to pay a premium invoice, and they weren't sure, but thought you might actually have to pay another one in the near future for this same questionable work. What would you say? Are you kidding me? You'd scream bloody murder. You'd probably be so insulted that you'd be willing to spend extra money on an attorney or small claims court or something just to make sure the garage didn't get away with that crap. Well, that's approximately what's been happening for at least 2 years now at Rhode Island's Department of Labor and Trading. According to Projo's Kathy Gregg, State Auditor Dennis Hoyle has reported in each of his last 2 audits of the agency that the controls they have on the disbursement of unemployment compensation funds are so ineffective that his office cannot determine how many clients received payments greater than they were due or for periods of time way beyond what they were due. In both of the last 2 years, the regular audit has found some number of instances of fraud which have been duly referred to the state police. The problem is the auditor has no clue how many other cases he's missed based on the procedures employed in a regular audit. And all of that, forgive me, is according to Hoyle. To their credit, 2 state reps have tried to scream bloody murder. Charlestown Independent Blake Philippi and our own Patricia Morgan have issued a joint call for the governor to convene a forensic audit and to tighten up the operating procedures so unlimited unemployment benefits cannot continue to be dispensed in the absence of any supervision or oversight. The governor will almost certainly ignore the plea of these two lawmakers. And it's probably not just because they're on the other side of the aisle from her. The kind of audit that would be necessary would be very expensive, and it would almost certainly uncover a great deal of mismanagement. Then we would be faced with the prospect of going back to Rhode Islanders who'd received overpayments and collecting it all back with interest. In other words, it is such a mess that the administration will likely choose to just ignore it. Frankly, I'm not sure they have the backbone to plug the holes they now know about in the financial controls for this $100 million plus problem. As Rep. Morgan always asks, will you remember in November? Are you kidding me? It's your money. How could you not?
Welcome back. I'm Representative Patricia Morgan, and I'm here with Dexter Lui, who is a citizen of the United States, used to be a legal immigrant, and a legal immigrant, right? And we've been talking about illegal immigration and its effect on our country, on our legal immigrants, on our illegal immigrants, and it's just it's damaging all around.
Right.
But lately, we've been having a lot of rallies up in the State House. Governor Raimondo has promised, or in order to get elected, she promised to give driver's licenses to illegal immigrants. So people who have come here without permission, she wants to give them driver's licenses. You have any thoughts on that?
It's a big source of worry. I mean, we have, shall we say, we have a public discourse that is so divided in this country today. We're right in the midst of an enormous election cycle, arguably one of the most important in our lifetimes. This country, to those of us who have been paying taxes and been good citizens, law-abiding citizens, we're concerned about where this country is going. And this is an example of corrupt public discourse, which under, in my view, false pretenses, legitimizes something that is a privilege to American citizens.
Yeah, it should be a privilege.
It is a privilege.
To access our schools, our driver's licenses, all of the services and...
Correct.
Those are privileges of citizenship or legal immigration.
Right. And
legal residency.
Well, you wouldn't issue a driver's license to someone who hasn't passed a driving test, right? You wouldn't issue someone or afford someone the privilege of being an American citizen without having gone through the citizenship test successfully.
All of the requirements as well as the test, sure.
How then can we be assured that someone who did not come here legally will follow all of the rules, indeed the rules of the road, as well as the rules of this country, the law of the land, and what kind of problems that might create. And I know I've heard, again, this is obviously, I might be vilified for it, just like those who speak up about this issue and say, gee, you just don't understand the circumstances of these poor people. They just need to get to work. I get that. But the point is, if you came in through the front door, you're willing to do the heavy lifting and actually go through the entire process, of course you deserve a driver's license, just like any other legitimate permanent resident. But for our governor to suggest that, okay, forget the process and really have essentially a privileged class, undocumented privileged class, be given essentially a privilege, it's offensive. It really is. But
she cites safety concerns that if we give them driver's licenses, they'll all get insurance then.
Really?
That's what she says.
How were we assured of that?
You don't seem to believe her. Yeah, I think she misunderstands even the process of getting a driver's license or a car registration.
Right.
You don't need insurance to get a driver's license.
Well, philosophically, if I disrespect the law by coming into this country, what is going to give my neighbors the assurance that I will obey traffic laws?
Sure, the rules of the road. Exactly, but you know, I mean, she states, and she had the state police state, oh yeah, it'll be safer with everybody with a driver's license. You know, you can get a driver's license without having insurance. The truth is, it's a driver's license. You only need insurance if you got a car.
I have a question.
And you register that car. You have to prove that you have
right.
insurance.
That's right. My question is, and I'm asking...
You expected me to answer it, but go ahead.
I don't know, maybe you can...
I'm the one asking. Go ahead,
Well,
go
I mean, on the topic of driver's licenses and, registration for driving permit and so on, isn't this a mechanism by which those of us who are citizens vote?
Yes. You vote many times to get other privileges, access to other things. Correct. The driver's license is what you use,
correct,
right? And there's the other slippery part of it. You show up to vote, you have a driver's license.
Correct.
That's all you have to show. But if that driver's license is to an illegal, right? And you know, I worry about that because I really worry about the integrity of our elections. I think that's really, really important.
It's critical.
It would appear to anybody going up to a table, all right, I'm showing my driver's license, right? So any onlookers not looking at, they say, oh, well, we'll make the driver's license look different. But if somebody is sitting at that table, some operative is sitting at the table.
They're volunteers.
They're volunteers. They're going to say, okay, driver's license, check.
Right.
And the person gets to vote without having assimilated,
right,
without having become truly American in their heart and their minds.
Well, illegal person who's not legitimately in this country should not have the vote. And in fact, people who are legitimately in this country with a green card cannot vote.
No.
So, again, maybe to your point, cutting in front of the line, but it corrupts our electoral system. I mean, immeasurably, and it's dangerous.
And unfortunately, as our election laws are now, we can't make people prove that they're citizens.
Well, see, that's a whole nother discussion, of course.
That's a whole nother discussion, but you got a driver's license.
Right, you got a photo ID.
You get it whether you're here legally or not.
Yeah. Now, is it supposed to be marked, specifically marked? And of course, it's not going to be a big color because, I mean, obviously you will offend someone's sensibilities by pointing out the fact that they're not here legally.
Well, I'm sure they're going to say that there's going to be something on the card that makes it clear to everybody that they're here illegally.
How clear?
It's how clear, and will it be effective to stop voting, which is a privilege, a sacred privilege in my opinion.
Absolutely, yeah.
But all of the arguments that they're putting around it, that it'll make us safer on the roads, I don't see how that is. Having a card doesn't make you a safer driver. It doesn't make sure that you have insurance. I mean, we have citizens who have driver's licenses who don't have insurance because they buy it and they drop it right away once they register a car.
Right.
So the whole safety concerns, I think, is a falsified argument.
Well,
but then the voting.
It's part of the dishonest discourse, I hate to say. And that's how I see it. Dishonest. Yeah.
And then airport screening. You need a driver's license to get on a plane. Exactly. Now, not that I think every illegal immigrant's going to blow us up, but how do we know?
Right, right.
So, all right, I really want to thank you for coming and talking about this. This is a tough issue because I think people who really want to get to some kind of a ground where they're saying, come legally.
Right.
Come all day, come legally, but don't come illegally, are demonized. And that's just wrong in our culture, in our society. It's about the rule of law, and it's about respecting that, and it's about doing it the right way and protecting what is uniquely American. And I thank you very much for coming and talking with us.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you.
I got stuck on the topic of aging, so here we are with version 2 in the series. Boy, there's a lot to cover when it comes to getting old. I went to a website that says the purpose of the site was, quote, to provide relevant and varied resources to facilitate the exploration process for those interested in a career in aging. unquote. That started me off, and they started with this assumption. By most accounts, careers in aging are going to be among the next big things in the 21st century workplace. These folks have constructed a workbook they are ready to send me to help get into the field. Could be used by first-time job seekers, career changers, students of gerontology, or social entrepreneurs, whatever those folks do. They did include on the website a listing of 101 careers in aging. Good place to start, as I was sure that I didn't know much about interesting jobs people could have to provide a living wage concerning aging. These folks divided the job titles into 10 categories. Looked pretty comprehensive to me. They started with administration, things like human resources, volunteer management, and so on. Next was financial and legal services, elder law, fraud prevention, and so forth. Next was fitness wellness. Here they talked about fitness trainers, yoga instructors, nutrition counseling, and lots of other things. Next up was healthcare services continuum. That one was jammed with almost 80 job titles. Nicely alphabetized, starting with activity director and ending with thanatologist. Had no idea what that was. Went to the wiki, folks, and found out that thanatology is the scientific study of death. Along the way, the death folks decided that music might be helpful. They created a subtitle in the business called Music Thanatologist. These folks hold music vigils that seem to help both the individuals and the families. Seems many hospitals and hospices have music thanatologists on their staffs. I didn't know that. Back to the health titles. I noticed that besides being a geriatrician, you could also be one of 7 different geriatric workers, like geriatric care manager or geriatric caseworker, or maybe you would like to be a geriatric pharmacist. I wondered how many grads of the URI pharmacy program opt for that one. Next up involves housing and home modification. Here you might consider being an aging in-place specialist or a home safety auditor. I found one title I knew absolutely nothing about, and that would be Certified Eden Alternative Associate. Sounded like a college degree kind of thing. But apparently you can study into the job, and the folks at Eden Alternative will give you a certificate suitable for framing. The concept was to create a comprehensive culture change model regarding all the aspects of senior living. We have one nursing home facility in Rhode Island that has adopted the model, and that would be the Elmhurst Extended Care Facility in Providence. Look them up to see if I should sign up. Cost is only $259 a day, so $93,240 will keep you there for a year. Now, it is a for-profit facility, part of the Charter Care Health Partners. Now, that one is big, with all kinds of different facilities, including Roger Williams Medical Center and Our Lady of Fatima Hospital. Now, I looked up the board of directors and didn't know any of the 8 listed. Now, that should tell me something about being well-informed or not. Next on the exploring list was intergenerational activities. I like this one, adopt a grandparent. The environmental programs line item led me to the website of the Environmental Protection Agency. Specifically, the EPA would sign me up to get the electronic free newsletter entitled The Aging and Sustainability Listserv. This one will give me strategies to stay away from environmental health hazards. Well, maybe I'll sign up for that one. The remaining 4 categories of job titles included leisure and recreation, personal care and services, travel and transportation, and finally, a category for everything else that didn't fit elsewhere. And that would be miscellaneous gerontology career options. Now here we have chaplain, documentarian, diversity trainer, ethnographer, and one I really liked, the elder mediator. We have had mediators for a long time. These folks step in to help labor negotiations, for instance. Now we have trained up folks to step in and unravel the family bickering over dad's coin collection. So I read until I decided that a nap was in order. But the list didn't have a nap facilitator. Oh well, can't have everything done for you. Thank you for watching, and God bless.